Being from IFPRI, I'll certainly love to answer or try to get some reflection on the food policy change and destroy resilience kind of question. Indeed, I think the food policies are very static in the region, and in fact, they are a tool, and it has been said before, to keep the people quiet. So if we look at what happened in the food policy or broader policy, what were the responses to the 2007-2008 food price crisis? What were the early responses in the early stages of the Arab awakening? Food subsidies up, fuel subsidies up, public sector wages up. So this is a very easily administrative tool, easily to administrate and to kind of provide some kind of social safety net. Is it a dynamic kind of approach? Is it something that is sustainable? No, certainly not. It's not fiscally sustainable, it's not well targeted, and the latest research shows it may also contribute to the double burden of malnutrition, especially the food subsidies, meaning that because they are very calorie based, it's bread, oil, sugar, and so on, it's actually very bad for nutrition. It leads to obesity among adults and to stunting among children, which is the double burden of malnutrition. Mm-hmm. So absolutely destroying that system, not from today to tomorrow, because then we may create yet more conflict, but in a slow and meaningful way, moving from a subsidy-based to a more social safety kind of approach, I think is a very important food policy or general policy. I just take two more to leave more time. National versus household level food security. Indeed, the oil exporting countries in the Gulf, they certainly don't have any issues from my point of view, because at any time they can import food as much as they can. However, you will be surprised, and we did some kind of typology. There are quite a few countries which also have issues at the national level. I give you an example. Yemen uses, during normal times, about 15% of foreign exchange to import food. Now, during the food crisis, when prices doubled, that were already 30 to 35%. So for some countries, even national level food security is a big issue. And then finally, collaboration. I mean, I really like to hear from IFAD and from WFP. They focus more on policy. That's what we have been always saying is very important, and of course, IFPRI still believes that is the case. As Abdullah has stressed, if the policy framework is not right, then many other things may not have the desired impact, and so we'll be very happy to partner with all of you on the policy issues.
Thank you, Clemence. Mr. Diab?
Thank you. Let me start answering my dear friend Professor Maxwell's question. I think the food prices are the last trigger which has contributed in the Arab Spring. Many other factors which really has contributed to this are much more important than the food prices. The governance issues, the very high unemployment, poor performing economies in many areas, exclusion of large proportion of population from governance. And what happened is that really people were just exploding almost. And one incident which happened in Tunisia, which has changed the whole, brought the Arab Spring in the other countries, is not because of the hike in food alone. I feel that people were almost ready. The corruption level, the governance, poor governance, the whole has accumulated and reaches a level where it needs a trigger, the last trigger which has made all these people go in the street. The prices after Arab Spring has even doubled, and it's continuing, and now is much higher than 3 years ago. It is not creating that because there have been some change in the region. If you take in Tunisia and in Egypt, in Yemen, and many other countries. And many other countries are really changing their approaches now towards governance. And there are many initiatives in the region which is really much more different, and it would never have been done if there was no Arab Spring. To our friend and colleague from FAO and on resilience and on mandates, I feel that the resilience itself is too big issue and too big area to give a room for all of us. And I think the most important thing for us to do before really we see what can I do and what other agencies do is to start from the context analysis and see what type of shocks and what type of support, external support is needed, what type of internal support is needed, to map this one and map the resources which are available against those one, and start really working and cooperating and working together. I think, I believe that the role and the leadership of governments is very important really to ensure the success and sustainability of any intervention. If we have to do that one, then we have to work closely and start working with the government to develop whatever strategies is, in addressing the resilience strategy within any country, whether it's in a region or in different areas, but after really understanding the context within which we will be operating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ismahan?
So I would like to take the question from the colleague from IDRC. So definitely I agree with you. Most of the institutions are maybe didn't revise their strategies. So I think there is a need for maybe not a reform, but maybe looking back on what are the needs of the farmers, what are the agriculture system that are the most profitable for them, that they need for the local market or the external market as well. So if I see Morocco, if I take Morocco as an example, for the most important cash crops, we don't have research. We don't have researchers, we don't have research capacity. So that could be citrus, that will be, for example, vegetables, that will be lentils and others. And we are focusing mostly on few crops. That was the trend. Everybody was working on few of them and we followed. So I think differently, most of the countries, they have to look at where their add value is. Is it for making sure that they have certain food sovereignty on a portion of their food needs, or maybe for add value and export needs? So I fully agree with you. I could cite other examples, but I could see the discrepancies if I look at the whole research portfolio in the Arab world. Going back to the question of the national, regional, and the household food security, what I'm seeing in the Gulf countries is that most of them, after the crisis, the price hikes in 2008, most of them start looking at developing their own food securities. And most of their food securities, indeed, Saudi was doing a lot of production internally and was also bringing a lot of production to the region, but it was at the cost of the water. So most of them, they are very much aware of the water value right now. Most of them are very cautious that they can't produce it internally. Nonetheless, some of them want to produce at least a certain amount, or maybe make sure that they have enough storages to go through the crisis time. So there is, and most of them, unfortunately, they're not looking at the regional level. Most of them is mostly national. So although we know that the fact that what happened in Syria affected very, very much the market in the region, most of them, they don't think regional. And I think that's really needed. That's really needed for most of the Arab world to think regionally from the food security side, but also from the market and the trade side, because the power of trade is huge. And most of the countries that produce sell it for very little. If I can give example of potato, for example, when Saudi stopped open field agriculture last year, there was a huge crisis of potato in the region. People need it. But most of the countries, producers like Morocco and others, couldn't shift their market somewhere else. So there is the trade component that most of the countries, because of being a rentier state, again, they're completely locked in it. And that's really one of the powerful things that any region can use. And I think a coalition between those countries in a meaningful way, it's very much needed to really buffer maybe the crisis in some countries or the climate change or the crisis at the international market as well.